The poor have no place here. The son of the client's president said that before dousing my younger brother's head in beer. At the time, I invited representatives from 10 of our partner firms, all of which collaborated with the 30 companies I manage, to an end-of-year celebration I was throwing at a fancy Japanese restaurant. The president of Harris Construction's son, Michael Harris, was the one who poured beer over my brother's head. I requested a towel from the restaurant personnel right away. Harris Construction then went through hell. I'm James Anderson, and I'm 32. Mark, my 22-year-old brother, is 10 years my junior. Our grandfather left us the real estate company that we currently operate. Mark and I have had many highs and lows during our lives. I want to take a moment to reflect on our history. My mother was an office administrator at my grandfather's real estate firm, and my father was a salesman there when I was born. I was a normal, healthy preschool-aged boy. My grandfather owned a terrace house where we lived. My aunt, who was my mother's younger sister, shared a terrace house with her husband. They spoiled me like their nephew because they didn't have any kids. I was frequently taken to and from preschool by my aunt, who was a homemaker. Even as a student in primary school, I liked hanging out with my terrace friends, visiting their homes, playing games, and working on homework. My family welcomed the cute little brother when I was in the higher elementary school years. When Mark was 1 year old, he began going to daycare, and my aunt kept taking him there and back. Mark would run to me when he got home from daycare and say, "James, I'm home," after he could speak a little. I was infatuated with him. However, tragedy occurred during my sophomore year of middle school. My parents died unexpectedly. As I embraced 4-year-old Mark, who was crying hysterically, I couldn't help but cry during the little funeral my grandfather hosted for them. Devastated by the unexpected death of her sister, my aunt was sobbing uncontrollably. My parents were laid to rest in their grave after being reduced to ashes. My grandfather had tears in his eyes. It took me some time to come to terms with the fact. However, Mark, who was still very small, wept every day. He refused to eat or attend childcare. "James, where is Daddy? Where is Mommy?" He would tremble and cry while asking me that. All I could do was hold his small body tightly, swallowing my own tears. Eventually, we were adopted by my aunt and uncle. Our last name changed from Taylor to Anderson. My classmates knew the circumstances, so they didn't say anything. But I, once a lively boy, became a much quieter person. My aunt worked hard to cook meals like rice porridge for Mark, and gradually he began to eat more and sleep well, often sticking close to me. When I became a third-year middle school student, I decided I wanted to work instead of going to high school. Though my aunt and uncle treated us kindly, I didn't want to burden them too much. I wanted to buy what I needed myself instead of asking my aunt. I also wanted to provide for Mark, who was about to start elementary school. Though my uncle strongly encouraged me to continue my education, I sought advice from my grandfather. He introduced me to a construction site through a connection. I decided to take the high school equivalency test while working. I started working on site, and during that time, Mark entered elementary school. Although he was a bright child, he seemed reserved at school. The construction work was tough, but at night, I bought high school textbooks and studied hard. Mark, who ate well and slept soundly, was given a shared room with me on the second floor of the house. It was divided by a single sliding screen, each of us with about 6 tatami mats of space. I also helped Mark with his homework. Mark turned out to be quite good at studying. My aunt's cooking tasted just like my mother's, and it was delicious. The house diagonally across from where we used to live as a family now had new occupants. The only thing I brought with me that belonged to my late mother was her small laptop, which I cherished deeply. My uncle, who worked as a salesperson for an insurance company, had an internet connection at home, so I occasionally used my mother's laptop, learning how to use the keyboard. Mark also seemed interested in it, playing simple games and typing out the alphabet for fun. When Mark was in the 3rd grade, he started skipping school. My aunt noticed it and brought it up with me, though she didn't know the reason why. I asked Mark, "Do you not like school?" Yeah, he replied hesitantly. "Did something happen?" I asked. "Promise you won't tell anyone, James." "Yeah, I promise," I said. That's when he told me that a classmate, Michael, the same Michael Harris who bullied him before, was taunting him, calling him names like orphan and poor kid from the terrace houses. Though it added to my aunt's burdens, Mark was doing well academically. I asked my aunt not to push him to attend school too much, as I thought forcing him might only make things worse. By that time, I had turned 18, passed my high school equivalency exam, and used my savings to get a driver's license. When I turned 20, I got a call from my grandfather. "James, you've been working hard at the site, and with your studies. Can you use a computer?" "Yeah, Grandpa, I can use it a little," I replied. "Good. How about working in the administrative department of our company?" "What?" I was surprised. Grandpa bought me a suit and arranged for me to say my goodbyes to Mr. Ford, the boss at the construction site, and the rest of the team who had supported me. I transitioned to working at my grandfather's company. Until I saved up enough for my own car, Grandpa let me use one of the company vehicles for commuting. My responsibilities included buying office supplies and handling other miscellaneous tasks. By then, Mark was in 5th grade, rarely attending school but continuing his studies at home. With my first paycheck, I bought Mark a new computer and enrolled him in an online education program. I occasionally helped Mark with his studies, though he rarely needed it. "Thanks, James," he said with a bright smile, clearly thrilled with his new computer. He had become quite introverted by this time, but had developed a deep interest in computers. Honestly, I thought he might know more about them than I did. Our mother's laptop had become outdated by then. As I settled into my job at Grandpa's company, I couldn't help but reflect. This is where Mom and Dad used to work. After 3 years of working in admin and handling various tasks, Grandpa approached me with a new challenge. "James, how about trying your hand at sales, like your father used to?" "Sales, huh? Do you think I can handle it?" I asked, uncertain. "Don't worry. I'll come with you at first, and you can learn little by little," he reassured me. With Grandpa's guidance, I began learning the ropes of sales. Sometimes I accompanied Grandpa to client dinners and business entertainment events. Grandpa introduced me as a new hire because my last name was different, and no one suspected I had been hired through family connections. Grandpa believed it was better to keep that quiet, as nepotism might lead to resentment among the other employees. Meanwhile, Mark had entered middle school but remained introverted and continued to skip school most of the time. Still, his studies were progressing smoothly through his online education program. He showed up for exams and consistently achieved perfect scores, proudly showing me his results. However, he wasn't very good at physical education. It seemed Michael Harris's bullying hadn't stopped, but I didn't want to pressure Mark into attending school if it would harm his mental health. Instead, Mark often helped my aunt around the house, and she appreciated his kindness. "James, how's Mark doing with his studies?" my aunt asked me one day. "Thanks for everything, Auntie. He's doing great, always getting perfect scores," I replied with a smile. "Wow, computers these days are amazing," my aunt exclaimed with a laugh. I started giving my uncle $300 a month for household expenses. At first, he refused, saying I didn't need to pay since we weren't being charged rent thanks to Grandpa. But when I mentioned that Mark was growing and eating more, he finally accepted. As I became more independent in my sales role, I began visiting various construction companies and small real estate firms. Over time, I got along well with my colleagues in the sales department, often going out for drinks at pubs. Thanks to the sales tips I had learned from Grandpa, my performance was strong, and I ranked high in sales results. My closest colleague was a guy named Alex. "James, you're at the top of sales again this month. What's your secret?" he asked. "Secret? I don't really know. Maybe it's just luck," I replied. Luck? Nah, you're good, look. Maybe that's the trick. Appearances matter, huh? Me? Good looking. That's the first time I've heard that. I chuckled. Honestly, I just smile a lot and try to lighten the mood. Ah, so charm is key too, huh? Yeah, especially since most of our clients are in construction. A lot of them are loud and intimidating. So I try to make things a little less tense. Got it. I'll give it my best too, Alex said with a grin. That was the kind of person Alex was. At that time, I was 25 years old, and Mark was preparing for high school entrance exams. One day, he came to me for advice. James, I still hate school. I don't want to go to high school, he admitted. Really? That's a shame, since you're so good at studying. What about taking the bar exam? Maybe becoming a lawyer. A lawyer? Mark asked, surprised. Yeah, why not? Talk to Grandpa about it, I suggested. When I said that, it seemed he had a discussion with Grandpa. In the end, he decided to get his high school diploma and enrolled in an online commercial high school program. Grandpa also suggested that Mark start working at our company, beginning as a cleaner. Mark readily accepted, and Grandpa had him work directly with other cleaning contractors to learn the ropes. From then on, I started commuting with Mark by train. He had been homebound for so long that he wasn't used to public transportation anymore. Mark was dressed casually as he boarded the train. That's when he ran into someone he really didn't want to see. Hey, Mark, so you're just some dropout, huh? A poor loser with no future. How pathetic. A loud voice jeered. Mark stayed silent. Later, I found out that the guy was Michael Harris, the same bully who had tormented Mark since elementary school. Apparently, Michael came from a wealthy family, lived in a mansion, and was always bragging about his riches, surrounded by his lackeys. Mark and I decided to take an earlier train starting the next day. From what I'd heard, that guy Michael was truly unpleasant, and we didn't want to start our mornings with such negativity. As we commuted, I stood beside Mark in my suit, and it seemed Michael hadn't realized I was Mark's older brother. Mark, meanwhile, had developed an interest in law and decided to aim for the bar exam. Even after work, he studied diligently, just as I had when I was younger. Using his own salary, he enrolled in an online course to prepare for the exam. He also earned his real estate broker's license and, in just 4 years, passed the bar exam. At the same time, he completed his high school diploma. I was in awe of Mark's dedication. He was even more disciplined than I had been at 20. Mark also obtained his notary license, which he excitedly shared with Grandpa. To celebrate, Grandpa invited us to a high-end Japanese restaurant. Mark wore the suit Grandpa had bought him, and he was visibly nervous about the luxurious atmosphere. We followed Grandpa inside, taking in the grandeur. You've both worked hard. Relax and enjoy tonight, Grandpa said. James, you've been the top performer in sales. And Mark, your diligence is incredible. So, Mark, will you be working at a law firm for now during your judicial apprenticeship? Yeah, Grandpa, for a little while, Mark replied. I see. Well, do your best. Once you're done, I want you to become our company's legal advisor, Grandpa said with a proud smile. Thank you, Grandpa. Absolutely, Mark replied enthusiastically. As the soft sound of a piano played in the background, I felt at peace. When my parents passed away, I couldn't think about anything except burying myself in work and studies to forget the pain. Perhaps Mark had felt the same way. Grandpa must have also struggled immensely after losing his only son. Thinking about it, I felt my eyes welling up. Grandpa poured us some high-end steak and said, Mark, happy 20th birthday. Cheers. We all toasted and enjoyed an incredible feast together. I couldn't help but think, someday I want to bring my aunt and uncle, who took such good care of us, to a place like this. After enjoying the delicious meal, we headed home. Eventually, Mark obtained his lawyer's license at 22. However, he started working in the accounting department of Grandpa's company, since he had graduated from a commercial high school. He was skilled at accounting. At the same time, he officially became our company's legal advisor. I was now 32 years old. I continued to focus on sales, building up our client base one step at a time for small real estate and construction companies. I would lease land for apartments or houses, helping them grow. This was Grandpa's method. Rather than selling land outright, he generated income through rents. At that time, we had 25 major clients. 3 years later, the number of clients under my management grew to 30. Grandpa was overjoyed. Around then, Grandpa's health started to decline. I was 35 and Mark was 25. Grandpa had to start dialysis treatments, which limited his ability to work. He appointed me as the company president and made Mark his executive secretary. After that, Grandpa had something important to discuss with us. We headed once again to a high-end Japanese restaurant. "Sorry to take you away from your busy schedules," he said, "but I wanted to talk about something important. I may not have much time left." "What are you talking about, Grandpa?" I protested. "Yeah, don't say things like that. You've got to stay strong," Mark added. No, it's not about being weak. I decided to give both of you my assets as a living inheritance," Grandpa said calmly. "Oh, I see. So this is about the properties, right?" I asked. "Exactly. I want everything to be transferred over, so I'll need your signatures here," Grandpa explained, sliding the paperwork over to us. When we saw the total assets, we were speechless. Grandpa had always been both kind and strict. When we said we didn't want to go to high school or college, he didn't let us take the easy way out. He sent me to work on a construction site, and Mark to start as a cleaner, teaching us the harsh realities of life. At the same time, he instilled in us the importance of education. Grandpa himself had faced struggles as a high school graduate, working tirelessly to build his legacy. Grandma had passed away before we were born, so Grandpa had focused solely on work to cope with his sadness. After that day, Grandpa began teaching me the ins and outs of running the company. Mark excelled in the accounting department. Though we were brothers, our age gap was significant, and many people didn't even realize we were related. Still, our achievements spoke for themselves, and the staff fully supported our promotions. One evening, Alex invited me out for drinks. "James, you're amazing, becoming the company president and all. Those clients we have now, you brought them in. The rest of us were just handling paperwork," Alex said with a laugh. "Thanks, Alex, but honestly, your reports were always so clear and helpful. I really appreciated them. I've already talked to Chairman Mr. Taylor, and we're appointing you as the sales department manager," I told him. "What? Really? That's incredible. Thank you, Alex." Alex and I had shared a lot, even though I didn't have much of a youth. We hung out at pubs and explored the city together whenever we could. Grandpa was not only a wise businessman but also a kind-hearted person. In recent years, more young people have been moving to rural areas. The cost of living is high, and remote work has made relocation more practical. Grandpa suggested that we use part of the inheritance he had gifted us to purchase land in rural regions. Mark and I began traveling to these areas together, working on sales. We bought up underutilized or depopulated land at higher prices, helping the local economy. I asked Alex, the head of the sales department, to propose partnerships to construction companies in rural areas. Many properties were abandoned, creating problems for local communities. We offered to assist with demolishing these structures, which encouraged property owners to sell the land to us. Mark and I also visited government offices together to discuss transportation infrastructure in these areas, suggesting improvements for construction projects. We worked with reliable construction companies that had partnered with us before. As a result, our workload became heavier and heavier, but we were grateful for the opportunities during such tough economic times. To express our gratitude, Mark and I decided to gift a luxury apartment to our aunt and uncle, who had raised us like their own children. My aunt, who raised us like her own, and my uncle, who was always so kind to us, were overjoyed with their new home. Losing our parents was a deep sadness, but with the support of so many people, we had managed to move forward. Grandpa had always treated us as his beloved grandchildren, and through his guidance and generosity, we thrived. As the year came to a close, the snow began to fall. It had been the busiest year of our lives. Grandpa suggested hosting an end-of-year party for 10 of our key business partners. We booked a spacious private room at our usual high-end Japanese restaurant and invited about 20 employees from various construction and real estate firms, not just the presidents but others who were actively involved in the industries. As we sent out invitations online, I noticed one name that caught my attention: Michael Harris. Curious, I did some research and confirmed he was the son of the president of Harris Construction. Grandpa now held the role of honorary chairman in practice, and due to his dietary restrictions, he mentioned he would only give a brief greeting before leaving. The day of the year-end party arrived. 20 guests arrived in high spirits. Among them were familiar faces, CEOs and employees who knew Mark and me well, and others we had never met before. Grandpa, now essentially the chairman of the company, greeted everyone with a short speech. Thank you all for coming despite your busy schedules. It's been an incredibly demanding year, and I hope you enjoy tonight at your leisure. I have other engagements, so I'll leave after this toast. Here's to all of you. Cheers. The room echoed with a warm collective cheer as Grandpa raised his glass before quietly departing. After Grandpa left, the year-end party continued in a lively atmosphere. However, it wasn't the routine of a bar. Since it was held in a traditional Japanese restaurant, everyone maintained proper decorum. I sat across from Mark, scanning the room. My eyes searched for the face of someone I had only seen once years ago. Michael Harris. I was almost certain it was him. Just as I thought that, Michael spotted Mark. Well, if it isn't Mark, which construction company do you work for these days? He asked mockingly. Mark responded calmly. Ah, Michael, I don't work in construction. I'm in real estate. Real estate? Ha! How did a high school dropout like you even get a job and show up at a place like this? You're a joke. The poor don't belong here, Michael sneered, and with that, he poured beer over Mark's head. Hey, what the hell are you doing, Michael? I stood up, glaring at him. You haven't changed a bit, have you? No, it's you who hasn't changed. You're still out of place here, Michael shot back. I sighed deeply, ignoring the murmurs of the others in the room, and quickly ran to find the restaurant staff. I borrowed 3 towels. Mark, here, use these to clean up, I said, handing him the towels. Michael glanced at me and sneered. And who are you, old man? This loser's friend. The private room buzzed with whispers and uneasy glances. I took a deep breath and looked directly at him. You're Michael Harris, right? Tell me, where do you work? Michael puffed out his chest. I'm the son of the president of Harris Construction. Ah, I see. So you're the infamous Michael Harris who bullied my younger brother since childhood, I said calmly. Wait, your brother? Who are you? He stammered. Without a word, I pulled out a business card with our company name listing me as the CEO and handed it to him. CEO of Taylor Real Estate, I said. CEO, James Anderson. Michael's face turned pale, and his body began to tremble. I followed up. And Mark, my brother, is my executive secretary. Executive secretary. Michael stammered, disbelief written across his face. That's right, I said coldly. And you've really outdone yourself today, haven't you? All the land your father's company rents is under my name. After what you did to my brother, tonight, consider every single one of our contracts canceled. I'll also be demanding you buy back all the land immediately. Wait, I didn't know. Please forgive me. I don't know how I'll explain this to my father. He pleaded desperately. That's not my problem. And another thing, what's with this talk of a high school dropout and poverty? Just so you know, we both earned high school diplomas. But our work ethic has nothing to do with formal education. Oh, and by the way, Mark is also our company's legal advisor. What you just did could easily be classified as assault. I'll be filing charges. You'd better inform your father immediately. Legal advisor, the lawyer, Michael muttered, his voice shaking before he bolted from the room. I turned to the other guests and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely apologize for the commotion. Please enjoy the rest of the evening. Mark," and I quietly paid the bill and left the restaurant. On the way out, I informed Grandpa about what had happened. "He'll probably come to apologize tomorrow," Grandpa said with certainty. As predicted, Michael showed up at our office the next day with his father, the president of Harris Construction. Grandpa, Mark, and I met them at reception. Michael's father, Mr. Harris, placed a gift box on the counter and bowed deeply before getting on his knees in apology. I responded to them with Mark and Grandpa at the reception desk. "My son behaved terribly last night. I deeply apologize for his actions," Mr. Harris said, his head lowered. He then forced Michael to bow his head as well. Michael followed suit, saying, "I am truly sorry," with his forehead pressed to the floor. Grandpa, looking at them sternly, finally spoke. "What you did to my dear grandson. Honestly, but well," he said. "Raise your heads." As Mr. Harris lifted his head, he looked visibly shaken. "I had no idea Mark was your grandson, Mr. Taylor. Please, I beg you, don't sever ties with us." Grandpa turned to Mark. "The one who was harmed is Mark. He will decide." Mark's expression was calm but firm. "All future dealings are off the table. Every piece of land my brother owns must be bought back immediately. I never want to see Michael's face again." Michael whimpered, "No, please." Mark continued, "If all the land is bought back, I won't report this to the police. Handle the paperwork immediately." Mr. Harris stuttered, "But we don't have that kind of money." "I can introduce you to a financial institution," Mark replied coldly. Defeated, the two left the office with their heads hung low. Shortly afterward, Harris Construction collapsed under the weight of its debts. The company couldn't secure enough funds and eventually went bankrupt. It was perhaps a case of karma for having looked down on my brother all those years. Mr. Harris ended up working as a long-haul truck driver, and Michael, after begging an acquaintance for work, ended up as a laborer on construction sites, yelled at constantly by his supervisors. The once spoiled, Michael, was now struggling to survive day and night in harsh conditions. As for me, Alex introduced me to a friend of his wife, and we began dating. Mark, on the other hand, started seeing someone from one of our business partners, and things were going well for him too. Grandpa continued to stay active, attending the hospital for dialysis, but still managing to stay healthy. 3 years later, at 38, I returned home from work to find my adorable 2-year-old daughter running to greet me at the door, my wife smiling warmly behind her. Mark and I had purchased a luxury apartment together. Mark was now living with his girlfriend, and they seemed happy. Alex and I remained close friends, and we often went on outdoor adventures, fishing, hiking, or trips to the beach with our families. Mark, who had missed out on much of his youth, now enjoyed date nights, dinners, and movies with his partner. Looking back, Grandpa's company had been a small real estate business when I was a child. Through his persistence, he grew it into what it is today, one of the most reputable real estate firms in Japan. My journey began on construction sites, never imagining I'd one day leave this company. I never imagined I would be recruited into my grandfather's company after passing the high school equivalency exam. While handling office work and miscellaneous tasks, I finally began to enjoy life a bit with Alex after becoming an adult, but I had no real youth to speak of during my younger years. Today, I take Grandpa to his medical appointments and often visit our aunt and uncle, bringing my daughter along. I realize now how lucky I've been. Losing our parents could have sent Mark and me to an orphanage, but thanks to Grandpa and many others, we were able to build a life. Sometimes, while fishing with Alex by the vast blue sea, I think about this. Our wives take care of the kids while we fish, and life feels peaceful. Real estate companies mainly operate on weekends. That's why I take my days off on Wednesdays or Thursdays, making it easier to drive to distant places with less traffic on the roads. Meanwhile, rumors say Mr. Harris is still driving trucks to pay off his debts, and Michael, under the harsh conditions of manual labor, has finally come to understand what struggle feels like. If that year-end party hadn't happened, perhaps Michael would have continued looking down on Mark every time they crossed paths. Through hot days and cold nights, the one spoiled, Michael Harris, is said to be barely holding up. When I think about how, without that year-end party, Mark might have continued to be belittled by Michael, called poor or a dropout every time they crossed paths, it sends chills down my spine. Mark had disliked Michael since elementary school, to the point where he couldn't even attend school because of him. But Mark used those experiences as motivation to excel in his studies. Perhaps focusing on academics was the only way he could cope with the loneliness of losing our parents. My daughter will soon turn 4. Our parents passed away when Mark was 4 years old. At the time, Mark cried endlessly. He wouldn't eat and resisted even being called to the bath. Once he started to calm down, I made it a point to bathe him every day. I'd sing in the bathroom, and the echo made him laugh and smile. Now, just like back then, I sing in the bath with my daughter, who sits in the tub, smiling and singing along. And now my wife is expecting our second child. The next one is expected to be a boy. I will finally become a father of 2, just like my parents once were. I vow to continue protecting the company Grandpa worked so hard to build, both as a father and as its president.